All right, let's dive right in, folks. Today we're going deep on Genesis chapter 18. It's an incredible chapter that tackles some pretty big themes that are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago.
It really is remarkable how much is packed into just one chapter. You've got hospitality, faith, divine justice, even the power of intercession all woven together.
Yeah, it's like a crash course in ancient wisdom. So let's set the scene. We've got Abraham and Sarah living in the plains of Mamre, and they're getting on in years, especially Sarah.
And in that time and place, having a son was everything. Legacy, continuity, it all hinged on that.
Right, the weight of societal expectations must have been immense. So picture this. Three mysterious visitors show up at their doorstep. Now, hospitality back then wasn't just good manners, it was a sacred duty. And Abraham, well, he was known for his generosity.
Oh, yeah, he went above and beyond, washed their feet, offered shade, promised a feast. It really speaks to this whole concept of guest friendship, which was deeply ingrained in their culture.
It wasn't just a meal, right? He was preparing a full-on feast. Tender calf, fresh bread, milk, butter, the works. But here's where things get interesting. As they're enjoying this feast, one of the visitors, speaking for God, drops a bombshell. Sarah, he says, will have a son within a year. Now, Sarah's listening in from inside the tent, and she can't help but laugh.
It seems impossible, right, given her age and all the societal pressure surrounding childbearing.
It's like her laughter is this mix of disbelief, maybe a little bit of fear, maybe even some defensiveness. What do you think?
It's a very human response, when we're confronted with something that challenges our understanding of what's possible. It's natural to react that way, and God, being all-knowing, picks up on her laughter. He asks, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?"
It's like this gentle but firm reminder that His ways are higher than our ways. His plans operate on a completely different level than our limited human understanding.
Exactly, and it's a beautiful illustration of how faith can lead to the extraordinary, even in the face of doubt. But then the story takes another turn. The focus shifts from Abraham and Sarah to Sodom and Gomorrah, these cities known for their wickedness.
Ah, yes, those cities. And this is where we see Abraham's incredible courage and his commitment to justice. God reveals his intention to investigate to see if the rumors about their depravity are true. And that's when Abraham steps in. He doesn't just sit back passively. He engages with God. He pleads for mercy.
And it's not just a casual plea, right? He starts this back and forth with God, this intense negotiation. Would he spare the cities for 50 righteous people? God agrees. Then Abraham boldly starts bargaining down 45, 40, 30, 20, finally settling on 10.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? This idea that one person's voice, their willingness to stand up for others, could potentially sway the course of events. What do you make of that?
It really highlights this concept of intercession, the power of advocating for others even when they might not deserve it. And it also brings up this timeless tension between justice and mercy. How do we hold people accountable for their actions while also leaving room for compassion? It's something we grapple with even today.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface here, but already we've got radical hospitality, faith in the face of the impossible, a bold commitment to justice, and the power of intercession, all in the span of a few verses. It just goes to show the depth and complexity of these ancient stories.
And it makes you think, how can we take these ancient stories and make them relevant to our lives today?
Yeah, like we were talking about Abraham's hospitality, he went all out. But how does that translate to the 21st century? I mean, are we supposed to be roasting calves for every unexpected guest?
Well, it's not so much about the literal act, right? It's about the heart behind it. It's about cultivating that same spirit of generosity that Abraham embodied.
So you're saying it's more about a shift in mindset, less about the grand gestures and more about those everyday acts of kindness.
Exactly. Think about it. We're so often caught up in our own lives, our own to-do lists. But what if we made a conscious effort to extend ourselves for others? Especially those who might be different from us or who are going through a tough time.
Like welcoming new neighbors, volunteering our time at a local soup kitchen, even just offering a listening ear to someone who needs it.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person, regardless of their background or their circumstances.
That's a powerful message. And speaking of recognizing worth, let's circle back to Sarah for a moment. Her reaction to the news of her impending motherhood was so human, so relatable.
It was. I mean, can you imagine being in her shoes? Years of longing, societal pressures, and then suddenly this promise that seems utterly impossible.
And her laughter, even though it came from a place of disbelief, it was almost like a defense mechanism. We've all had those moments where we doubt, right? Or we question whether things can really change for the better.
Right. And I think Sarah's story reminds us that sometimes we need to surrender our limited perspective and embrace the possibility that something bigger than ourselves is at work, something that we might not fully understand.
It's about letting go of that need to control everything and trusting that even if we don't have all the answers right now, things will ultimately unfold as they should.
It's about having faith, not just in a religious sense, but faith in the potential for good, faith in our own resilience, faith in the idea that even amidst chaos and uncertainty, there's still beauty and hope to be found.
I love that. Now, we can't talk about this chapter without addressing the elephant in the room, or should I say, the cities in the plain.
Hmm.
This whole concept of justice and mercy that Abraham brings up when he intercedes for Sodom and Gomorrah.
Ah, yes, those infamous cities. And it's interesting because their fate really highlights this tension that we still grapple with today. How do we balance the need for justice with the desire for compassion?
It's a tough question, isn't it? We see it play out in so many areas of life, from our legal systems to social justice movements to even our personal relationships. When is it appropriate to hold someone accountable for their actions? And when is it right to offer grace and forgiveness?
It's not about letting people off the hook. It's about recognizing the complexity of human behavior and understanding that people can make mistakes, even terrible ones, and still be worthy of redemption. It's about finding ways to create systems that promote both accountability and restoration.
And that brings us back to Abraham's role as an advocate. He was willing to stand up and speak out for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, even though he knew they had done wrong.
It's a powerful example of moral courage. It challenges us to think about how we can be a voice for the voiceless, how we can use our own platforms and influence to advocate for those who are marginalized or mistreated.
So whether it's speaking out against injustice, supporting organizations that are working to make a difference, or simply having those difficult conversations with friends and family who might hold different views.
It all starts with recognizing that we have a responsibility to care for one another, to build a world where everyone has the chance to thrive. And that's a legacy worth fighting for.
All right, so we've talked about Abraham's amazing hospitality, Sarah's journey of faith, and Abraham's powerful intercession for those cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. But now it's time to face the music. What happened to those cities?
Well, things take a dark turn. Remember those two visitors? They head toward Sodom, while Abraham stays behind, pleading one last time for God to spare the city.
Yeah, if there were even 10 righteous people there. 10. You'd think in a whole city there'd be at least 10 good people.
Right. It makes you think about how deep wickedness can run in a society. At what point is it too late? At what point is there no turning back?
Well, I think we're about to find out. What happens when those visitors arrive in Sodom?
It's not good. The text describes how all the men of Sodom, young and old, surrounded the house where the visitors were staying, demanding that they be brought out so they could know them.
I don't think no means what it usually means.
Yeah, it's a euphemism for sexual assault. The men of Sodom were intent on violence and domination. It's really disturbing.
Wow, that's intense. So what did the visitors do?
They managed to escape, and they warned Lot, Abraham's nephew, who was living in Sodom. They told him to get out of the city with his family before daybreak because God was about to destroy it.
So even though there was this impending judgment, there was still mercy, right? God gave them a chance to escape.
Definitely. But it wasn't without tragedy. Lot hesitated, and his wife, disobeying the instructions, looked back at the city as they were fleeing and was turned into a pillar of salt.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It really is. It's a reminder that sometimes clinging to the past, even if it's familiar, can be destructive.
Okay, so what ultimately happened to those cities?
As dawn broke, God rained fire and brimstone down on Sodom and Gomorrah, totally destroying them and everyone who was left. It's a very vivid picture of divine judgment.
It's heavy stuff. So is this chapter just a warning, like a be good or else kind of thing?
I think it's more than that. It's definitely a cautionary tale about the dangers of sin, both on a personal level and a societal level. But it's also a call to action, a reminder that we can't just sit back and watch while injustice happens.
Yeah, like we have a responsibility to stand up for what's right, to protect the vulnerable, to make a difference.
Exactly. This deep dive into Genesis chapter 18 has been full of twists and turns. We've seen incredible hospitality, unwavering faith, and the struggle for justice and mercy.
It's amazing how these ancient stories still speak to us today. It's been a fascinating journey. Thanks for taking us through it.
My pleasure. I hope everyone listening will keep exploring this text and see what other gems they can uncover.